How would you rate your self-esteem, your self-confidence? And by that, we mean not arrogance, pomposity, ego, but a sense of being comfortable in your own skin, sense of dignity, of nobility. A person could have tremendous qualities, a great mind, developed emotions, and all the other gifts that are humanly possible. And yet, if you're lacking that sense of dignity, that inner sense of self-worth that is generated from within, all those qualities can never really be fully appreciated. Because you can be very smart, but you have no self-confidence. So how does one build that dignity? Is there a way to do so? Especially if you grew up in an environment, a home, a community, role models that did not cultivate, that did not nurture that sense of self. Please join me in this vital discussion on Crown Yourself, embracing the nobility of Malchut. Hi, this is Simon Jacobson, and we'll be speaking about Crown Yourself, embracing the nobility of Malchut. This program is dedicated by Todor Georgiev in honor of all the Jewish people for bringing Torah to the world and eradicating all evil out of this world. How would you rate your self-confidence, your self-esteem? And by that, I don't mean arrogance, ego, pomposity. I mean that sense of self-value, being comfortable in your own skin, not being overly satisfying and pleasing others. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be nice and civil, but that your life is not driven by what others think of you. You have a sense of self, and that is generated from within. Being comfortable in your own skin. There are not many people that have that. And for many different reasons. The most obvious of the usual suspects is the home you grew up in, the environment. You had very critical parents. Critical meaning they criticized, they judged, very demanding. That often undermines that sense of self. It could also come from our schooling, from friends, bullying, and in general, social pressures and demands, where your life is not driven by just pleasing someone else. It's somewhat of an invisible force, but it's vital in life, like a foundation. It's not visible, you don't see it, but it's the basis that holds up the entire structure. So a person can be blessed with many qualities. Intelligence, cognitive skills, profound emotions. But if you're lacking that sense, what I'll be referring to dignity, nobility, a sense of that special quality that makes you unique, all those other faculties, all those other virtues fall on the wayside because you don't feel the confidence to act on them. It's like having a big tool chest, but something is missing. And this is not uncommon. I've met many people, brilliant people, people with tremendous skills, but they don't have that self-confidence for whatever reason. Is there something you can do about that? Let's discuss. So what we've been doing in the last weeks, you may have noticed, is like a series of emotional development, character development, looking at different parts of our emotional psyche, whether it's love or discipline, Corresponding to the 7 weeks between Passover and Shavuot is a special period of this type of personality development and character refinement, with each week focusing on another one of the 7 emotions on the spectrum of the human psyche. And we're now in the last week, the week of Malchut. Malchut literally means kingship or nobility. That each of us is a king, a queen, a prince, and princess, with a certain sense of king, yes, a certain kingly presence. On the very most basic level, it's when your mother looks at you as soon as you're born, stares into the child's eyes, and with love and warmth, conveying the message, you absolutely matter to me. I will always be there for you. You're valuable. You're precious. You're indispensable. This is the message every child deserves to hear and should hear. Unfortunately, we don't always hear it, because that reinforces that very sense of self. Now keep in mind, we all have it. Malchut is not something you acquire. It's inherent. You're born with it. It's a part of your very being. Just like we're born, a healthy person is born with arms and legs, eyes and ears. We're born with these emotions, including Malchut. Unfortunately, like any type of situation, if you don't cultivate it, you don't nurture it, you don't feed it, so it begins to go undercover, so to speak. In the most extreme situations of abuse and trauma and pain, you know who is hurt most? Who's the most injured? That sense of self, that sense of value. You start feeling, I don't deserve to be loved. I'm not valuable enough. I'm not worthy. All those are the antithesis of Malchut. Malchut is, yes, I am worthy. I am of value. I truly matter. And again, this is not about a sense of ego or arrogance, definitely not. It's just a sense that you have value and you're not a doormat. And therefore you should love yourself in a healthy way and not loathe yourself. I remember the first time I heard someone tell me, I loathe myself. Every time I meet someone, I am expecting them to criticize, find some fault. That doesn't come from nowhere. There's no vacuum. That comes from repeatedly being dismissed, ignored, criticized, judged, condescended, patronized. I mean, I can go on, the list goes on. All those things undermine us in our formative years, so as we grow older, we're not sure of ourselves. So the good news is that Malchut is part of your inherent being. So like a muscle that may not have been exercised, or different parts of your system that may not have been fully cultivated, we need to water our own gardens to allow the flowers to emerge. And one of those flowers, maybe the most important one, is that dignity. That sense of nobility, sense that you are not an accident, you're not arbitrary, you're not an afterthought, but you truly matter. And you matter in a way that is actually indispensable. The world cannot exist without you because you were put here for a reason. I've shared this very touching and one of the most, I would say, definitive moments in my life, where I was in a Midwest city years ago speaking after my book Toward a Meaningful Life came out. And that night happened to be a night of a big event happened in the JCC where I spoke. It was a memorial service for Prime Minister Rabin of Israel, who was assassinated tragically. So more people, thousands of people came out, not to hear me per se, but they came. And since I was the main speaker scheduled before that event, I had a very large audience. And maybe it was for this very story. After I finished my talk, so the custom of the land is you sit down, you sign books, and people lined up, people have a question, I signed the books. When I got back home to New York, I received a letter, an email, from a woman who was in the audience. She said she stood on line, but it was a long line, and then she anyway got cold feet. She felt more appropriate to write to me. And here's what she writes. I remember it like vividly, almost word for word. I'm a 47-year-old executive working in a very prominent firm. By all measures, I'm considered a success. I make money, well connected, I have influence. I built up my equity, well respected. However, beneath the veneer of this success lies a woman in shreds. You see, my soul was murdered when I was a young child. I grew up in a very abusive home, endured terrible abuse, physical, emotional, psychological, sexual. And what it left me was a complete shell, a self-loathing individual seeking some affirmation. I was told I was worthless. I was treated like I was worthless, and then began to believe it. Of course, it's affected my entire life as I grew older, affects especially my emotional relationships, intimacy. I don't trust. I'm always testing people, and therefore people don't trust me. I've tried all types of therapy. Nothing's really worked. So I take it day to day, day by day, breathing in, breathing out. People like myself who have a lack of inner control create outer control. I became super ambitious, super successful, all simply to numb and somewhat soothe that inner existential pain. Often I'm suicidal, feeling that it's not worth living like this. But again, nobody knows. It's all my deep, dark secret. Recently, someone gave me a copy of your book, Toward a Meaningful Life. I've long given up hope. So someone gave me a copy of your book, and I was just browsing through it, and a line jumped out at me. On the chapter on birth, in the beginning there's a quote, "Birth is God saying you matter." And I read it again, "Birth is God saying you matter." And I read it a third time, "Birth is God saying you matter." And for some reason, it struck a very deep chord inside me, like a silver bullet between the eyes. And despite what my parents told me, how worthless I am, how valueless I am, despite what society tells us, that our value is only based on our looks, our youth, our buying power, our social status, that we're only a statistic on someone's balance sheet. Despite all that, suddenly I realized after 47 years that I matter to the one that matters most, God, the one who put me here. And no matter what I look like that day, no matter how I behave, no matter how much I produce, I always matter. So though I have years to heal, but for the first time in my life I have hope. I have my work cut out for me. I have to create bypass surgery. And this is what she says, which would be eloquent were it not under the circumstances. I need to create bypass surgery to bypass the clogged and blocked and injured arteries impacted by the abuse I endured, and reconnect to that pure moment at birth where God said, "You matter, you are my child, I love you unconditionally, you are indispensable." And then she concludes, "Thank you for giving me back my life." Even as I say it now, all the emotions that I had then conjure up. I could not stop crying and sobbing. Firstly, a woman sharing such a sacred confidence with a complete stranger. But just recognizing the deep pain that may be coming from. I remember I went back to read the chapter myself, even though I'd written the book and the chapter. But once you write a book, it belongs to the reader. I wanted to read it through her eyes, through her lens, through her perspective. I wrote back to her, offering her my help, my support, any way I can, asking permission to tell the story, which she granted. Asked me not to mention her name, because she said, "I'm sure some people will want to reach out to me out of compassion, want to offer me help, or others that have similar stories." So of course I've honored that. And I wrote to her. I said, it's so profound what you wrote to me, because I started thinking, And I started asking audience everywhere, do you think you matter? Do I think I matter? Now, usually people first start with a chuckle, a giggle, but then I say, let me spell out the question. I understand that once you exist, you feel you have some value. You have family, you have friends, you have plaques, you have honors, awards, different reasons you think you're valuable. People around you, they'll love you, tell you you matter. But let's rephrase the question. On a cosmic level, if you were never born, would it make a difference to anyone? Remember, there'd be no tragedy if you don't appear because no one's expecting you. Once you exist, there's a circumstantial aspect that you find ways to create value. But would it really make a difference in a world of 8 billion people? And here people become more uncomfortable. Some will say, I'm not really sure. Some say clearly, no, I don't think I matter at all on that level. Subjectively, in my community, people that know me, but to matter on that level? And I remember writing back to her and saying, I've asked many people this question. Now, many of us who grew up in relatively secure, functional homes, I'm the oldest of 5 children. No parents are perfect, but I was nurtured, I was loved, I was told I'm valuable. So I never really asked that question, whether I matter. Because my parents and my friends and those around me always reinforce that message. But is that why I really matter? Because what happens if one day my parents, God forbid, would wake up and say, no, you don't really matter, or they treat me in a way that doesn't look like I deserve any compassion, deserve love? Does that mean my stocks go down? Is it dependent on others? I wrote, you did not have that luxury. So sometimes the eclipse of the sun reveals more about the sun than does the light of the sun. The eclipse that you experienced forced you to discover what causes true value, not people. Parents can reinforce it, friends can reinforce it, but it comes from a place that's beyond us, something that no one can take from you because no one gave it to you, and that is God saying, by virtue of your existence, birth is God saying you matter. And I began developing a theory that maybe a big driving subconscious force within all of us, or conscious, for success, our ambitions, is perhaps masking a subconscious fear that we maybe don't matter that much. So we try to justify our existence. We try to demonstrate that we do have value. Maybe just to mask that fear. But it's what I learned from this woman who did not have that luxury, did not have that dignity, but came to discover it through her darkness, that that's really the root of true dignity. It's who you are, it's your very existence. I'm not getting now into a scientific debate about the origins of our species, the origins of humanity. But I will say philosophical, psychological, and spiritually, if we dismiss ourselves as mere beasts in the field, or random bacteria that just evolved, what the most terrible part of that is that you're undermining your value. The perspective that the Bible tells us, the Torah tells us, you were created in the divine image. And as such, you're a piece of the divine, a piece of eternity and infinity on this earth. And your actions, and your thoughts, and your words, and your choices matter now and forever. And what you need to accomplish in life, you and only you can accomplish. That is Malchut. That's ultimate dignity. Because that drives everything else. As I mentioned, you can have all the qualities, but if you don't feel that you're necessary, then it's optional. So imagine someone coming to you and say, hey, we need you to get up tomorrow morning early to volunteer. We're going to visit a hospital. We're going to visit some needy people. We need you to come along. So early in the morning, you say to yourself, do you really need me? Can someone else do it? And the person says, you know what? If you can't do it, that's also fine. That's not exactly going to motivate you to go out of your way. But if they say, I can't do it without you, they tell this anecdote. The olden days, the old cities, old world. So it was a very poor town. People barely eked out a living. But one day they get notice that the great king of the entire empire is coming to visit that little town. So you can imagine what kind of joy. But they wanted also to present the king with some gift, but they didn't have much. So they came up with an idea. We'll put a big barrel in the middle of the town. Everyone will take a little pitcher of wine. Wine was very, very expensive and very precious, but a little. Everyone pour in a little wine in the barrel, and that way the king will appreciate. Obviously, he has a lot more than we can give him, but he'll appreciate our effort. So remember, one family says, you know what? Everyone's going to be pouring wine. Wine is very, very expensive. Let's pour a pitcher of water into the barrel. Who will notice? What difference will it make? The problem was that every townsperson in that town came up with the same brilliant idea. So when the king came, they gave him a barrel of what? Of water. Everyone thought, what's my bottle of wine? What's my little cup of wine going to make a difference? But when you hear that you make a difference, and your actions have a reaction, and every cause has an effect, and using the physics example of a butterfly effect, that one little act here can change the world, the course of existence, then it's a whole different story. Then you understand your value. You matter, your choices matter. Now and forever, that informs your whole life. Life then is not arbitrary. You just try to do as best as you can, but it's urgent. A sense of urgency, a sense of value. That's called crowning yourself. You have a crown on your head. Keser Malchut in the Hebrew. Because you're a king, you're a queen, you're a prince, you're a princess. You're not just an individual. You have something that you, and only you, can contribute. Now, truth to that dignity should actually bring a lot of humility. And that's how it's exactly explained, that Malchut is dignity, but it also has nothing of its own. That's the words of the Zohar, like the moon. It doesn't have light of its own, it's reflecting the light of the sun. But in that humility comes the greatest power of all. That infinite value that you have. Because it's not coming from ego, it's not coming from others, it's coming from within you, but because you suspend yourself, instead of focusing on your own self and your own needs, you recognize you're part of something greater. That's what gives you this indispensable value. And that's the power each one of us has. Now, how do you cultivate that? Especially if you don't feel it. You feel the opposite. So it comes down to exercises. You have to exercise. A few practical exercises. One is get involved in something you really find value in. At the end of the day, don't go to sleep saying, I did nothing today, I'm a loser, I'm worthless. Something you did. You helped someone. You wrote something. You shared something. Something you can say, this day was used in a way that I feel proud. In other words, pride breeds pride. Dignity breeds dignity. If you don't do things that bring you pride, it's not going to just come from nowhere. So doing things that actually make you proud. It could be helping your child, if you have children. It could be helping a stranger. There's so many ways, but it's something proactive that you've done that you can say, I feel good about this. And again, this is not about patting yourself on the back. It's just cultivating a sense, not a sense of loser or failure, but a sense of success, even if it's small steps. Second thing, surround yourself with people that are encouraging. So often we have friends on our Rolodex, on our contact list. When you call them with any enthusiasm, any excitement, they're always sure to throw cold water. Don't get so excited. No, they're either cynical or skeptical or basically cool you off. You want someone who will say, yes, that's a great idea. Let's try it. I believe in you. You want people like that in your life. Because again, that sense of failure is also, failure breeds failure. Misery loves company, and failure loves company, meaning being around people that just reinforce a negative self-image is not what you want. So that's the second thing. The third thing, feed your soul. I often talk about immersing yourself in a spiritual spa every day. SPA acronym, study, prayer, action. Cognitive, emotional, and behavioral conditioning. Study something soulful, spiritual, something that feeds your soul, that you recognize what a soul is, what a unique soul is. We're not just bodies. Our body is our vehicle. The soul is what makes you valuable. Study about it, read about it, be inspired by it. Second is emotional conditioning. A prayer, a song, a poem that feeds you emotionally. A great prayer that I often suggest is the morning one, Moda'ani, it's called. Thank you, we acknowledge, thank you for returning my soul to me. But said with emotion, with a sense of appreciation. And finally, behavioral. Doing acts of kindness, acts of goodness. And today it's very easy. You don't even have to move. You can share a beautiful thought, a beautiful feeling that you receive by social media, text, email, or other ways. Easily share it with your list or create a list. So all these suggestions are exercises that exercise the Malchut, the dignity within you. And finally, treating others with dignity, respectfully, understanding their value. So easy to dismiss someone. No, every person deserves dignity. Every person deserves respect. If for no other reason, because God put them in this world and created them as a prince or a princess. And again, dignity breeds dignity. Treating others with dignity comes back to you as well. And surely there are more ideas that if you invest and put your mind to it, you'll come up with new ideas. So it's time, finally time, to embrace, to access the Malchut, the dignity, the nobility, the crown within you. That you can walk upright with your head high, in humility, but with a sense of purpose, with a sense of significance, that you have something that you and only you can accomplish in this world. And we're all waiting. We all need you to play your music, to sing your song. This has been Simon Jacobson, meaningfullife.com. If this message was meaningful to you, please share it with others. Subscribe to our offering, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Love to hear from you. Feedback, comments, suggestions, thoughts. Be blessed, be well, and rise to the dignity that you deserve. Thank you.
This program is brought to you by the Meaningful Life Center. Please help us continue our programs. Make even a small contribution at meaningfullife.com/donate.